So good evening, friends. Welcome to this meeting. I also welcome Niranjan as our guest. Our objective today is to discuss the report submitted by Chris Gopalakrishnan Committee on data governance regulation, because the government of India wants the public to submit their comments before August 13. Already there is a demand that the time is not sufficient, it has to be postponed, so we have to wait and see. But this is the first time this particular legislation has been talked about, and like the PDPB, which is actually a third generation you can say rendition. There was a Sri Krishna report, then there was PDPA 2018, and we are now discussing PDPA 2019. Whereas this report which we are discussing is still the very, very first generation report. So there will be a lot of changes which will be required. But anyway, the journey has started. It may take a couple of years for it to be converted into an act. If PDPA has taken 2 years to reach the current stage, Data Governance Act may take equal time, if not more. So it is a regulation which is in the making, but still it's very interesting, and part of the recommendations will be affecting the pending PDP bill because certain questions which were being raised about PDPB get sorted out, because this legislation or this committee report has taken over the responsibility of regulating the non-personal data. So in that context, we will be discussing the committee report, basically from the perspective of making people understand what is there in the report, so that they can send in their comments, if any, to us in the next few days, so that we will be able to put together a report before the deadline, which is August 13. So we don't have a very, you can say, ambitious idea of submitting some major recommendations and other things, but let us try to first understand what is there in the Act and then take the next few days to mull over it. So that is the limited objective of today's meeting. As we know...
Navi sir, I'm interrupting you. Yeah. If you want to go to Facebook Live, I just asked my digital guy. He's saying the host has to connect to Facebook Live. There is no app required, nothing. And if you are the speaker, you just open your Facebook Live, connect to Facebook Live. It will become live streaming will start. Or if Mr. Ramesh is to do it, then you have to make not the co-host. You have to make him the host.
Okay.
So whoever the host is, it has to be the speaker. It has to be the one who has to take it on online streaming to Facebook.
Okay, right. Thank you. The problem was actually of echo. Anyway, let us proceed with today's this thing. We'll try that some other time.
Correct.
So we know that Justice Sri Krishna Committee, before it finalized its recommendations, made one comment that there is a need for separately regulating non-personal data. And it also made a mention of something called community data. And he said that my report doesn't take into account the regulation of community data, which is obviously different from the personal data. And he suggested that the government may think of a new regulation for community data. That was the cue for the government to start this Gopalakrishna Committee in September 2019. And the limited terms of reference for this group was to study the various issues related to non-personal data and to make specific suggestions for consideration of the central government for regulating non-personal data. This is the background under which it started. In fact, people who have listened to me in the PDPA course, you have already heard me make repeated reference to the possibility of data governance becoming an important area of management in an organization. And I have also said that there will be somebody taking on the role of a data governance officer who may normally come from the management cadre, and he will be interacting with the data protection officer, and the two together will manage the entire data assets of an organization in such a manner that the DPO will hold on to his rights to manage the personal data, both from security aspect and even when the personal data has to be commercially exploited, like in a direct marketing company, or in the situation like CCPA where direct marketing may be permitted under certain explicit consents. The commercial exploitation of the personal data was also the responsibility of the DPO. So normally the DPO's role was bypassing the CISO's role even in terms of security. Now we said that apart from this, there will be a role for somebody called a data governance officer who will be more focusing towards how to get more value out of the data as an asset. People who say data is oil, etc., basically think that data can be used to extract higher monetary value for the organization, which means that you have to extract financial benefit out of processing of data. But that power or the ability to get more money out of data was restricted to non-personal data because personal data was highly, you can say, regulated. So this data governance officer was supposed to look at this non-personal data from both the commercial point of view, and since CISO is already there, I was always thinking that in this governance structure, DGO will only focus on commercial aspects. CISO will continue to look at security aspects of non-personal data, besides advising the DPO where necessary in terms of security of personal data. So this was the structure which we already envisaged, and we were waiting for this data governance framework to be suggested by this Chris Gopalakrishna committee report, which has come in due time. Not much of this thing. They have taken just 1 year, which is quite good. This is the composition of the committee. It is a small committee with only 8 members, out of which if you remove the Secretary of Ministry of Information Technology as a coordinator, apart from Mr. Gopalakrishnan, there were representatives from the National Informatic Center, obviously from NASCOM, and there was a representative from IIIT Hyderabad, and one from IT for Change as a NGO organization, and there was a company called Avanti Finance. So basically this was a small group which has looked at the data governance framework and come up with whatever suggestions they wanted to communicate, and that is the report which is now before us. We will very quickly go through the list of recommendations. Initially, I will go through the recommendations from all the legal side, then I will ask Mr. Niranjan to comment on the recommendations or suggestions made on the technical side. Then we will go in for some discussions. Now, the very first recommendation which has been made by the committee is that non-personal data has to be provided a certain kind of definition. Of course, the definition of non-personal data is a residual definition from whatever is not personal data in Personal Data Protection Bill. That will become non-personal data. But within that non-personal data, the committee has suggested that we can make distinctions based on ownership, based on, let us say, the use, etc. And one categorization they have suggested is that non-personal data based on the ownership basis could be categorized into 3 categories: public non-personal data, community non-personal data, and private non-personal data. What they mean by public non-personal data is, of course, it has to be non-personal data. Let us remember that the recognition of a data as non-personal data comes only after eliminating the definition of personal data. So in the data journey of data, if you have seen, I have been talking about this different avatars of data. So when data moves from personal data to a non-personal data status through anonymization, or the data itself has been generated without the personal identification of any natural person, that data is what we are calling as non-personal data. Now, if that data is collected or generated by a government body or any agency of the government, now this committee wants to call it as public non-personal data. The second one is non-personal data which is generated by a community, a group of persons, where there is some kind of a joint ownership of several natural persons. That is what is called as community data. Remember, we are still talking of anonymized personal data, even which also may exist in the aggregated form of a community. Okay, so that is called community non-personal data. The last category is the private non-personal data, which is collected and produced by entities other than the government. This is where the commercial interests of all the private sector companies is involved. Now, after defining the data, non-personal data on the basis of ownership, the committee also suggests that we can recognize even in non-personal data something like sensitive non-personal data and critical non-personal data, like what has been done in the Personal Data Protection Act. And it has also suggested that to some extent there will be an inheritance of sensitivity from the Personal Data Protection Act to the non-personal data regulation whenever it comes. For example, when we call something as sensitive non-personal data, it may relate to data which is sensitive because of national security and strategic interest, which basically comes under the ownership of the government, which is the public non-personal data. It also recognizes that there can be a business sensitive or confidential information. Remember, Personal Data Protection Act refers only to natural persons, not to the data of a company. Data of the company was only regulated and secured based on Information Technology Act to cover up the crimes which may be done with the corporate confidential data. Now this corporate confidential data becomes a subject matter of this non-personal data, and it will be recognized as sensitive from the perspective of corporate information. Okay. Then there is this anonymized data. This particular suggestion introduces a slight ambiguity as far as anonymized data, and this is going to be one of the things which we will be discussing. Okay. What it says is, an anonymized data bears a risk of re-identification, and therefore there could be some sensitive anonymized non-personal data. I somehow don't fully agree with this concept, because anonymization is a stage in which you convert a personal data into a non-personal data. Either that anonymization process is effective or ineffective. If it is ineffective, then the data is not anonymized, not non-personal data. It continues to be a personal data, though somebody unknowingly may call it as non-personal data. So the responsibility of converting a personal data into non-personal data through anonymization rests with the data controller or data fiduciary of the personal data, it has got no relation to the regulation of non-personal data. However, this committee says that since there is a possibility of a risk of re-identification, we recommend that when you take consent for anonymization, consent for collection of personal data, along with other consents, this suggests please take a consent for anonymization also. But this point is something which we need to reject, because you cannot take a consent from a personal data subject and say that I am going to anonymize and release it to the public. But if I fail to do a good anonymization, then you are giving me consent for that inefficient anonymization. You cannot make him responsible. So I don't know whether this was the right way of looking at the sensitivity. But this is one point which may be subject to discussions. Now that is about the definition of personal data: public, private, community, sensitive, critical, and normal. Okay, and sensitive in terms of personal data is related to the PDPB. So therefore, whenever a sensitive personal data is anonymized, that becomes sensitive non-personal data. That is about the definitions of the data. Coming to the roles, this particular committee recognizes 4 kinds of roles. One is the data principal, another is called the data custodian, then there are data trustees and data trusts. This is also another area where some discussions are required to be made. So the classification of personal, non-personal data, then this assigned roles, these are the areas in which a lot of thinking has to go in. Now, when we call a person a data principal, we are talking of the data principal who generates the data, but we are talking of non-personal data generated by an individual. He is the data principal. There may also be a corporate entity or somebody like that who can be a data principal. Data principal under PDPB is an individual natural person. Data principal under this regulation may be a non-natural person also. The second category is data custodian, who collects, stores, and processes, and also perhaps uses. Okay. Now, the role of a data custodian, data trustees, and data trusts, there could be some difficulty in understanding, and there could be overlapping. So we'll go ahead and see what is the data trustees. See, basically this custodian has been mentioned so that individual data principals can pass on the data at the first stage to this authority called a data custodian, which will be, of course, even a private sector intermediary business. Then there will be data trustees who can represent the data principals, like the consent manager in the Personal Data Protection Act. There could be data trustees. Then this regulation or committee also suggested there can be some institutional infrastructure for managing data, that is non-personal data, and that will be called a data trust. In fact, the data principal will generate the non-personal data, perhaps creates a repository with a data custodian, if necessary directly or through a data principal's representative as a data trustee, and then the data trust will try to add value and make it marketable. In fact, like a stock market selling the stocks, data trust may set up an exchange of this non-personal data and bring value. So, and maybe data trusts and even data trustees, maybe even government bodies. So these are the 4 kinds of roles which has been currently envisaged under this particular recommendations. The third recommendation is on establishing a legal basis for the right over the non-personal data. Now, as far as the public data is concerned, which is generated by the government and by its activities, it is considered similar to a natural resource, a sovereign, you can say a property of the government of India. The community non-personal data is considered as a shared asset which belongs to all the community members, and it is administered by data custodians. The private sector, which collects the data and perhaps uses various value addition methods, uses artificial intelligence, whatnot, and then add value, they have been recognized under three subcategories. One is there can be a raw or factual data which may be collected by a private sector company. Let us say a weather report or some other information. It's a raw data, not identified with a person, and it is a factual data. Now, that data collected by a private sector may be considered as something which needs to be shared. It is similar to a national resource, but not collected by the government, collected by the private sector, and it may be shareable. The second kind of data is something on which the private sector has added value. While the raw or factual data may be shared without any payment from the government, value-added data may be leveraged and the government may make certain payments. And this committee also suggests that beyond this raw data which has to be shared freely with the government, and value-added data which may be sold to the government also at a price, the part of the data on which your artificial intelligence value or your proprietary knowledge, your IP are involved, that can remain confidential. So out of the non-personal data collected and generated by the private sector, there will be a raw data, there will be a value-added data. Raw data, government may ask for being shared. This is the one which may come under Section 91 of Personal Data Protection Act. Then value-added data, of course, it will be negotiated for a certain cost. That is where your data custodians, data trustees will have a role. They have to take care of the interest of the data principals on the one hand, at the same time negotiate for a good price with whoever is interested, which may be even the government. The proprietary information is kept with the company. If they want, they can put it through the data trust for market value discovery, and they may make their money out of it. This is how the legal basis for establishing the rights are considered. The other very, very important recommendation which has been made is defining part of the general business as data business. In fact, data business actually emerges out of the regular business. The regular business of any organization may consist of processing personal data and non-personal data. As long as there is personal data, which may be customers' data, which may be employees' data, there is this Personal Data Protection Act which will be handling that. Whatever is left out from there becomes non-personal data, and if the non-personal data so aggregated by an organization grows beyond a threshold level, the committee says recognize that as emergence of a data business. A data business is something which has to be discovered within the normal business, and it is a horizontal classification cutting across different industry sectors. For example, an organization which we today call as a bank may be tomorrow also called as being in data business. It may be a transport operator, but he will be called as a person having data business. That is, data business becomes an additional recognition of an organization, even a manufacturing company. Let us say there is a vehicle manufacturer like Maruti. It has got, let us say, 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 vehicles with, let us say, some intelligence built into the engine, which can perhaps generate the personal data. IoT devices also may do this. Now, those companies, IoT companies and transport companies, may suddenly realize that they have got not only personal data, but they have the capacity to anonymize that personal data and create a set of non-personal data. But when that non-personal data exceeds a certain, let us say, threshold level, government wants to recognize that you are now into data business. You are generating certain data which is non-personal, but it has got value. Now, if you have got that valuable asset, and we say that data is the kind of like a natural resource or a valuable asset of the nation, then we shall negotiate and say that if it is a raw or factual data, for example, the road or transport data, if you have collected the data about how the road conditions are there in a particular area or something like that, they may say raw or factual data collected by Maruti should be handed over to the government. If there is a value-added data, they may say that I will negotiate with you, or you put it into the exchange, whatever way, we will discover a value and pay you suitable money. And over and above that, if there is something which you consider as an IP right, then keep it with you. But this negotiation will happen. There could be an adjudication once there is a law. There could be disagreements. One company may say, this is entirely proprietary, I want to keep it. But the government may say, no, you have to hand it over. That kind of discussions may go on. So every organization with a number of customers or employees will suddenly become a data business in addition to whatever business they are otherwise doing. And today they were anonymizing this and making money out of it in certain cases. But tomorrow when they anonymize it, either they will be required to share it in the market so that there is a level playing field, so that you cannot hold on to the information and share it, for example, within your own closed community. So whether it is Facebook, whether it is Google, when they generate a lot of non-personal data, government may try to say that either you put it into the market, let us see who gets the highest bid, and we would like to take it. We will not allow you to hold the non-personal data. So this is one of the concepts which is coming out of this data business recognition, a very important aspect of this particular recommendation. Now, having defined data as personal, non-personal, and then the categories of data custodian, etc., now the committee also talks about data disclosure requirements, out of which one set of disclosure is required, which is there is a mandate to disclose the data. The second set may consist of even metadata, that is data about data, and there may be various mechanisms by which, if that is considered as a data of say with low say value input from the company, then maybe between the raw data which is mandatorily shared and the data for which payment is being made, this will fall somewhere in between. Even if payment is made, it will be a small amount of payment which may be made. The idea in all this is to ensure that there is this open access to metadata which the government wants to provide, so that some useful data becomes available to the community, and organizations like startups and others who can actually take value out of it, but today they are not having access to it because some big organization is holding it. Now this may become part of the shareable data, and the government may say, you are a data business, you have to share it, and we will get you a good value if there is value input from your end. Otherwise, we will say that you have to share it at no cost or whatever is that. Now, compliance requirements under this regulation may go hand in hand with the sectoral regulations like your RBI, IRDA, or whatever is that. So this regulation will be in addition to whatever else is there. As of now, the sectoral regulators have to work along with the PDPA regulator, which is the Data Protection Authority, with respect to the personal data. But with respect to the rest of the data which they are handling, all of which will be called non-personal data, now there will be additional regulation. So the entire data asset in the country will be either called personal data or it will be called non-personal data. And personal data is already being regulated under PDP bill, and the world knows how to regulate personal data, but the world does not know how to regulate non-personal data. The regulations on non-personal data governance are not that developed even elsewhere in the world. They are all being handled by big companies like the Googles and the Facebook for their own benefit. Tomorrow, when this regulation comes, India will be perhaps setting the trend for the world to ensure that the concept of data is oil, that benefit reaches the citizens of a country. Okay, so that is the essence of the data disclosure requirements. For the purpose of data sharing, this committee suggests that there will be some data which will be called sovereign data. In terms of national security and legal purposes, that data becomes the property of the government. There will also be some data which is a public interest data, which will have relations to community benefits, public good, research, innovation, policy making, better delivery of public services, etc. That sharing, for sharing purpose, they may be considered as data relevant for public interest. Then there may also be data relevant for economic reasons, and sharing principles may be developed for that economic principle based decisions to encourage competition, to have level playing field, to encourage innovation, then fair monetary consideration to be paid to data if necessary. All these things come under economic considerations. So data sharing principles will be established based on sovereign interest, public interest, and economic interest, and people will not be allowed to make whatever use they want about the non-personal data. In defining this data sharing mechanism, the suggestion is that government should improve existing open government data initiatives. There may not be many such initiatives today, which means that you may have to develop new initiatives. The idea in developing this is, one, raw and factual data pertaining to a community need to be shared, okay, subject to well-defined grounds, but with no remuneration. This is one objective of defining the data sharing mechanism. Second is, give a fair value to data which is not very critical, it is non-trivial, but some value input has gone in from the private sector. For that, determine a fair value. The third requirement or objective of the data sharing mechanism is develop a regulated data market so that prices will be determined by market forces. Say, suppose there is a transport related information which Google is developing. A company may bid for that, B company may bid for that. Now, if Jio is going to have a large share of non-personal data as well as personal data in India, and if Facebook wants to bid for that, there may be another Indian company which may overbid Facebook, and that kind of competition is what this particular regulation may try to develop. If the data custodians refuse to share data based on a request which is legitimate, then there may be some system of adjudication, legal issues, and so on. Then as regards cross-border transfer, the principle which PDPB has established now will be carried over here. That is, sensitive non-personal data may be transferred subject to a copy being kept in India. Critical non-personal data cannot be transferred. What is not critical or not sensitive will be shareable across the borders. That is going to be the cross-border suggestion. This is a suggestion. Don't think that this is an act or bill or something like that. This is a suggestion of the committee. And to ensure that these things happen, the committee suggests that we need to set up a non-personal data regulatory authority. Like the DPA to regulate the personal data, there will be a non-personal data regulatory authority. There will be, of course, some difference between this authority and the other authorities. For example, the DPA is focused on security of the privacy of an individual. So it is very restrictive. But this NPDA, if you want to call it, it will be focused more on the positive side. How do I make data, we are talking of non-personal data, how do we make non-personal data unlock its value so that the country benefits? So one is restrictive. DPA will be having a restrictive outlook, whereas NPDA will be having an outlook of how to get more value out of the non-personal data. Compared to the Competition Commission, again, this will be again a proactive actor, ensuring that necessary data will be available for needs such as social, public, or economic. And unlike your RBI and other sectoral regulators, this particular regulator will have to have expertise in multiple dimensions, cross-cutting the, having a sort of a view of different industry segments, and therefore play an effective role in ensuring data sharing. Otherwise, this regulator will have to work in consultation with the DPA, CCI, RBI, and all other organizations, try to build harmonious relationship and ensure that the regulation of personal data by DPA, regulation of sectoral requirements by sectoral people, and the non-personal data, they all put together ensure that the data as a whole gets regulated. So this is basically what the major recommendations from the legal side are concerned. Now I will request Mr. Niranjan to take over and give his views on some of the technology related inputs which this particular committee has suggested. Niranjan, I will keep the presentation and move it so that you can talk over it, okay?
Thanks, thanks Mr. Navi, and again, good evening everybody. What I will try and do in next 15 minutes, I will try and cover my perspectives on this report from a technology angle. Like Mr. Navi said, I will try and share what I have gathered when I went through the report, right? Most importantly, I think the data discovery thing Mr. Navi already spoke about. Obviously, companies will have to build their own systems to track how do you get to that data discovery, right? The business has reached a threshold, whether it is in terms of number of transactions or it is in terms of the revenues or so on and so forth. So there will have to be some systems internally built in to make sure that you track that. And in my understanding of the report, what it then suggests is that the company should then proactively come forward and register themselves as a data business. And the regulator would have given you an API, and we'll come to Open API in a minute. They would have published APIs where you can just go and invoke the API and you can register your business as a data business, right? And once you're obviously registered as a data business, then you have to start reporting on it, and you will have to send how much data did I generate, or how much revenues did I probably generate out of this data business, and so on and so forth. So that's also something that will come, right? So the whole data business registration process and management by itself will be a piece that companies will need to put together. Now, when you look at what is Open API, typically people on the call, hopefully, you have encountered what is an API. API is an application program interface. In web applications, in very simple terms, you will call an API to consume a service. So there is a service behind the API, and it will do certain things for you. You will send some inputs, it will process the inputs and send the output back to you in as simple terms. And there are different kind of APIs that used to be there. Over time, it has evolved. The latest set is the REST APIs, which is the most common. We used to have SOAP, UI, and all that in the past. Even now, legacy systems do use some of those, right? And what the community has done is come together, and they have come up with this recommendation called the Open API, which is essentially like open source, coming inspired by open source. It is a common standard for API, which means that if you have developed your services using common API, then anybody can develop, utilize that service by just invoking that standard protocol. And so all of the systems will be easily able to plug in. So suppose a smart, a startup company wants to develop a service on top of the data that is available. They simply need to write their application in Open API and invoke the Open API, consume the service, and do their analytics, and deliver to their businesses, right? So a standard way of consuming the data services that the data companies will provide. So that's one big recommendation. So even before I go down that, but what I wanted to also do is take a quick perspective on why the Gopal Krishna committee has done, recommended what they are talking about, right? If you take a step back, today the biggest issue, if you look from the perspective of a startup or from the perspective of even researchers, right, who are trying to do their PhD, for example, in areas of data sciences or machine learning and all that, data sets is the biggest issue. And a lot of times you are scrambling around for data. There are data sets available mostly in US on different websites, university websites. Google provides some, right? There are sites like Kaggle that provide. There are there's a University of Irvine database. So you can pull data from all of those and use, but that is not necessarily compatible with what is needed in India, right? And if India is generating so much data, then what is the need for us to pull from some websites in US? So that data is extremely valuable, right? So to harness that data is a critical need of the hour, and this committee has rightfully so put the recommendation to put together this infrastructure that will help us actually harness all of that data and help some of these startup companies or researchers to kind of leverage that infrastructure, right? And what do we need? What is the basic need from that infrastructure? If I'm a researcher or a startup company, I should be able to, first of all, easily use it, which is where the Open API thing comes in. Second, it should be obviously fast enough and secure enough for me to use. The infrastructure has to be fairly fast and secure, right? And it should be pretty seamless. I should be able to quickly get the data from wherever it is stored, right? So from that perspective, there are these standards that they have declared. So Open API is one which I spoke about. Distributed data storages, the way they work is you don't have one centralized data storage. Reason they do it is one, for speed, right? Because the if you distribute the database across different geographies and different hubs, you can obviously be much faster because you don't necessarily need to go to a central point to pull the data. Second is it will be much more secure. It is not a single point of failure. So the computing architecture is such that the database is distributed and it is centrally managed through a central database management system. Now this aligns very well with the new age technologies like edge computing. Edge computing also comes with the micro data centers, right? That is something that is catching up, which means that essentially each of these hubs will be pretty much self-reliant and independent. Most of the transactions will not cross the edge. Very few transactions will need to go all the way till the central cloud. You will be able to, so for example, in a connected car scenario today, if there is a edge compute architecture, most of the transactions are, transient transactions will happen at the edge. But for any big analytics where there is a data, the best practices sharing across all of these connected automobiles across different hubs, then you obviously need to go to the central database and analytics will be done and it will be distributed back, right? So, and so that is much faster because you don't necessarily need to go all the way, and you are also more secure because you're not moving data across different, a large distance. Now, from a data disclosure and sharing mechanisms, today, if somebody has to do things like APIs, it is pretty tedious even now, right? So I have to write my own API, I have to figure out where is the data warehouse, I'll have to fetch it and I'll have to use it. So what is coming up is these data exchanges. Today already quite a few large companies have set up data exchanges. Some of them, Snowflake has data warehouses. Now they have also released a data exchange product. Similarly, Microsoft on top of their Azure platform has come up with what they call as data share. AWS, Amazon has come up with their data exchange. Essentially, it is a one-stop shop for data. Behind the data exchange, there will be a numerous number of data warehouses and data lakes they pull the data from. But for me as a user, I can just simply ask for the data in whatever format. I can submit data in whatever format. I can ask for data in whatever format. And the tool, let's call it a tool, right? The data exchange for me is a tool. It will figure out and give me the data appropriately. So it makes it very easy for me to use it, right? The other thing is obviously, Mr. Navi spoke about the metadata thing. Open access literally means no charge, really, the way it is implemented. So obviously what the thinking is at least the metadata, which is just the information about the data, right? About the data schemas, what fields will you use? Do you have name? Do you have phone number? Do you have SSN? What is there? That much is shared with everybody. So metadata is something that is given for free. And beyond that, if you really want the real data, you have some value from the metadata, you want to do some real stuff, you will have to purchase the data. That's the recommendation at some reasonable rates, right? So apart from all of this, obviously there is a need to anonymize, and we heard that from Mr. Navi, right? It is non-personal data at the end of it. So you have to take personal data, anonymize it and make it non-personal data. There are a lot of algorithms that have come up for anonymization. Mr. Navi, if you can go to the next slide, some of these are covered there. Yeah. So over the years, a lot of research has happened, and they started with k-anonymity way back in 1970s, and then from there, 2006 saw L diversity, and later on T-closeness, and all these have come together. But every time they came up with one of these, they figured out somebody has cracked it, right? For example, k-anonymity, even before k-anonymity, the whole idea was just scratch out the first two identifiers and you're good. but then they figured out that in a particular case, and this is available on the web if you want to read up, they took health records of all the people from a particular area. They matched the voter database, and this one data scientist actually did this. And they proved that they could crack to the last record, right? They figured out the governor of Massachusetts health records. And so the algorithm obviously broke, and they kept on doing more research. End of it, they realized that these are not working. And so they went into a separate set of algorithms, which are now introducing noise into the data, either into the input data itself at the collection point, or to the output when the user queries the database. So they create what you call is a differential privacy. There's a DP a firewall kind of a thing, which will actually take the query and give you noise output. So you can't really make out that what is the real data. They will introduce a lot of false data into the output. So that kind of, again, the differential privacy works on two parameters. One is the, while you want to maximize data privacy, which is minimum loss of privacy, you also maximize the utility of the data, right? If you anonymize so much, then it should not become completely useless for the businesses. At the end of it, the business should be able to use it and make some money out of it. In terms of analytics and trending and all that, and able to sell it. That has to be some useful data, right? So other than that, there are a lot of tools. These ARX and Amnesia are popular tools on data anonymization. Similarly, this Anonymatron is a open source set of projects available on anonymization. Anybody can go pick up some of these projects and implement, and it's a learning opportunity for people. So those are on the anonymity, obviously a very, very important topic. If we can go to the next slide, Mr. Navi. Then they have also provided some global frameworks for the data business. And there is a discussion on the different frameworks. There is a 9-factor framework, which actually focuses on the entire data value creation chain, starting from the source where the data was collected to who is the collector, where is it stored, the data storage, the process data processing itself, and the information delivery to the end customer. The entire chain should be looked at as the recommendation. Similarly, there are classifications from OECD, and there is another framework for establishing the data drivenness of a market. So these are different global frameworks which are already available. Then there are data sharing mechanisms, right? Again, I think some of this came up in Mr. Navi's earlier discussion as well. Data sharing, again, they are looking at from 3 different perspectives. One is obviously if government is sharing the data, how will they share it with the community or with the private companies or data principals? If it is a community, do they need to share it with the government, or can they then sell it to a business? So that leads to all of these, government to business, and then there is government to the community data sharing. Also the B2B, obviously, there are businesses and there are industries that are generating data, and you want to learn from each other. You want to obviously also monetize that data. How do you then share data? Open data sharing is something that they want to talk about, at least, but again, I mean, it is self-contradictory, because at one point they say metadata is free, but then real data you have to charge for. Open data typically means the data is available for free, right? So anybody can pick up. And then anonymized data sharing is already something which we've been talking about. From the data sharing regulations perspective, there are a bunch of regulations that have been listed. Again, these are things globally that people have already done. Different countries have already done these kind of things. These are things they have quoted. And obviously they want that the current set of regulation picks up a lot of the best practices from all of these areas. Can we go forward, Mr. Navi? Yeah, the final thing, they have put an architecture which they have proposed. Now this is very similar to what Mr. Navi was saying. You know, there are companies that are generating data, or there are data principals, right? The companies or these data principals can then sell this data or give this data to a data custodian. Now the data principals can go through if they are part of a community, they can go to a data trustee who then will give that to a data custodian. Data custodian manages it. And then there is a highest layer of data trust, which is like the mega exchange. These data exchanges will probably be there, right? And so that is what they have tried to show, but it is, the terminology used is extremely different, right? There is inconsistency in the way terminologies have been used in this document. There is no mention of any data collector or CDPA throughout the document, but here they are talking about it. My understanding, CDPA is probably the anonymization algorithm, because certified data processor algorithm, they probably are processing the data before they give it to the what they call as the data cloud, is probably the custodians and the data trust itself, right? So who will actually store the data, process the data, create value on top of it, and the data exchanges that will actually help you trade and monetize the data. So this is what broadly I wanted to cover from a technology perspective. We can open up to questions, Mr. Navi.
Yeah. So there are some questions which are there. Maybe we will take that up, or if anybody else.
So one other commentary I wanted to just say, I mean, obviously this is a huge opportunity. I see comments also, Geo and all that. It is a huge opportunity for a lot of startups who want to look at all this data. They've been waiting, right? At the same time, it is a huge opportunity for the large cloud providers as well. People like Microsoft, people like Amazon will be lobbying for it, I would say, right? Because the amount of infrastructure that has to be built up for these data custodians or even the data trusts, the data exchanges is phenomenal. Obviously, then in turn, it will also generate opportunities for the consulting companies who will help a Microsoft or Amazon with these cloud implementations, right? All these large data exchanges and so on and so forth. So all in all, if this really goes through, it's a mega project. Obviously, there are tussles. Also, there will be push and pull. Why would a Geo want to give their data at a reasonable cost? They've invested so much and they've taken money from likes of Facebook and everybody. So how this will pan out, we have to wait and watch.
Yeah. Now, as far as this conflict is concerned, Amit Kothari says that there will be another set of laws, and therefore there will be conflict. What we have to look at is personal data is different, non-personal data is different. One is regulated by PDPB, other is regulated by the new regulation. If you cannot segregate and manage the transition, then only there will be overlapping. So overlapping will come not because of the two regulations, because we as technology people are unable to manage this transition, and therefore we try to do some anonymization and say that I have done anonymization, now I will release it to the NPD area. But there it is re-identified. That kind of a thing is not because of the law. It is because of certain deficiencies which we will be having. You know that PDPB also recognizes this re-identification as a punishable crime. Even in any other IT area, we have a law, let's say digital signature. Somebody breaks the digital signature, and that is a crime. So you cannot make a law for preventing crimes, because criminals are there. We have to only punish them. Similarly, these two laws address two different segments of data. So there should be no overlapping as long as we understand the purpose of each of these things. Okay. There could be some confusions in terminology because after a great effort, people are trying to understand the terminology of a data principal, data fiduciary versus data controller, consent manager, data processor, recipient in GDPR. So there are different types of nomenclatures which have been used. There have been some data protection laws in which they don't use the data controller, they say data owner. So we are already confronted with these multiple terms, and now to that we are adding more terms. Definitely there will be some confusion. So there is a lot of work for people like us to build awareness perhaps.
Why can't they standardize all the terms for everyone? Okay, data principal is data principal everywhere.
A taxonomy has to be created, and globally people should start using the same terminology, then it will become a little easier.
At least in India they should do it.
Yeah. Now, IPR protection, this governance recommendations do not have any relief. No. See, it has made a recommendation that if there is IP, there the organization can claim that I will not share. But if there is a shareability at a price, they can do that. And if the government wants to force them, there should be other mechanisms like compulsory licensing kind of a thing. IP is recognized, but there will be modalities by which IP may become shareable. Shouldn't APA publishing process mandatorily include an audit? See, we will have regulations subsequently. This is only a committee report. So when the regulations come, all this audit and other things will definitely be there. There is no doubt about that. Okay. Can India afford two different authorities? I hope so. Yeah. And see, if you want to regulate personal data, you have to automatically regulate non-personal data also. Otherwise, you have to leave it as not regulated. But if we think there is a value of data together, personal and non-personal, out of which you are taking out the personal data and remaining thing is there, if any value is there, we have to take that value for the national benefit. It is like the national resource, and they are trying to do that. Definitely there will be complications, but definitely it is a big ask, but it will perhaps has to be done. That's all.
I have one doubt. Can I come, sir?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. See, my issue is you have already having a IT authority with whom you are not able to get redressals. Even tribunals are crippled totally. Our judicial system is already totally burdened. They are not giving any report. Now, two more authorities, two more this one, whether it will function. First of all, it's already a expenditure which has no return at all. IT Act, we hardly have anything. We have to, common public is bearing. If you ask for two more authorities, that too, thinking that it will give some revenue, I think it will be a bias. When A has not performed well, B and C will certainly not perform. So it's another waste. Instead of it, why don't you have it under A itself, so that there will be different streams and we will save on our administration. That's all.
IT Act is governed by the IT secretaries as adjudicators, for whom no separate payment is made. They are already IT secretaries. They are handling this as additional responsibilities. Tribunal, there was a saber applied tribunal that also has been taken out, merged with the TDS Act. So there is a cost reduction there. Rest of it is the court. Okay. So IT Act will not take any further burden. The PDPA can generate revenue also. No, DPA can generate revenue because of both the administrative fines and other things. Even here, and also registration of various authorities. Like in the PDPA, every significant data fiduciary has to register. So there may be some regular revenue for that. Similarly, this act also may require registration and data business transition. When it happens, automatically a very big company will become a data business, and there may be registration. There has to be registration. It has already been mentioned. So there may be a fee for that. So there may be a revenue generation which may sustain this. I don't know. There may be administrative fines even here. So with the recovery of the registration and other charges plus the administrative fine, some revenue will be generated here. Adjudication had very little revenue, 2.5%, and it was going directly to the state government also. So nobody has actually made an estimate of how much of revenue the adjudicators generated. And we all know that they have all handled only a handful of cases in each of the states. So there is no point in calculating what revenue they generated, because they did not want to take up cases and they did not have time to do that, and therefore they did not take the revenue. So I hope here there will be some revenue generation.
One basic
Can
question,
I add to that,
has the committee overshoot its mandate? The mandate was to regulate the non-personal data, not to regulate the business of non-personal data. Let business grow itself. Why to go in the business domain? That's only concentrate on the regulation of non-personal data, not the business.
So my comment on that,
Yeah.
today data is probably residing with few large players.
Yes.
Like CEO, for example, right? If you don't regulate, it will never be available to the smaller companies like startups or even researchers. And if you create this environment and startups can actually blossom in this, we have a startup this thing, but it's not really going anywhere because they don't have enough data. Now, if this actually becomes big, the startups will start generating revenue that will pay for the taxes and all that, right? So in some ways, revenue will, it will be a self-feeding